I got a band 9 in IELTS reading 3 times. To get a high IELTS reading score, you must have a reading strategy. You must know how to find the correct answers quickly. If you want to score high on IELTS reading, this video is for you. We solve an IELTS reading practice test together step by step, and I show you how to figure out the correct answers really fast. If you are going to take your IELTS soon, check out my IELTS materials. There, I teach you everything you need to score high. I show you step by step how to give high-scoring answers. And of course, we do many practice tests together, so you will feel confident for your test. You can find the link to the IELTS materials in the description box. And now, let's get started. Here you can see the reading passage. Let's first have a look at the instructions. The instructions say, you should spend about 20 minutes on questions 1 to 13, which are based on reading passage 1 below. Then comes the passage, and here are the questions. Let's start with questions 1 to 6. The instructions say, reading passage 1 has 6 sections, A to F. Choose the correct heading for each section from the list of headings below. There are 2 headings you don't need. Write the correct number 1 to 8 in boxes 1 to 6 on your answer sheet. These are matching headings questions. I'm going to write this down. And they are called like that because you have to find the correct heading for each section. Now, let's quickly think about what exactly you have to do. Here it says, write the correct number 1 to 8 in boxes 1 to 6 on your answer sheet. And there are 2 headings you don't need. So on your answer sheet, you will have boxes 1 to 6, 5, 6. And these boxes correspond to the sections. So box number 1 corresponds to the first section, which is section A. The second box refers to section B, and so on. So here, this one is A, B, C, D, E, and F. What we are going to do now is, we are going to have a look at each section, think about what the section is talking about, so what the main idea of the section is. And then we have a look at the list of headings and go through the headings and figure out the correct heading for this section. Don't start by reading the whole passage first. Now, let's have a look at section A. Let's quickly skim the section and let's see what the section is mainly talking about. We start reading here. After a bad day, many of us intuitively seek the comfort of our pets, and animals may intuitively understand when we are feeling low too. Then the section goes on saying that the founder of modern nursing observed that a small pet is often an excellent companion for the sick. A psychoanalyst said that the presence of his dog had a calming effect on patients, and the American Red Cross used animals to help veterans recover from the trauma of First World War. Further, a zoologist coined the term human-animal bond to describe the close relationship that can develop between people and certain species. And today, animals, big and small, are used in the treatment of both mental and physical conditions. So what does this section say? What is it talking about? It's obviously talking about the relationship between animals and humans. Let's have a look at our headings. What options do we have? Heading number 1 says, advanced use of support animals. There is nothing about an advanced use of support animals in this section, so we move on. Why some species cannot train for AAT? This is not relevant because the section doesn't talk about AAT. We move on. Let's have a look at the sections. All of the following don't seem to be relevant, but the last one, animals appear to lift our spirits. This heading is interesting. Let's again have a look at section A. Does the section talk about animals that lift human spirits? We will read a bit more closely now. The section says, many of us intuitively seek the comfort of our pets. So This does allude to lifting human spirits in some way, right? And animals may intuitively understand when we are feeling low too. The founder of modern nursing says that a small pet is an excellent companion for the sick. Sigmund Freud recorded that the presence of his dog had a calming effect on his patients, and the Red Cross used animals to help veterans recover from the trauma of the First World War. So this heading fits, right? Animals appear to lift our spirits. So that's the correct heading for section A. So I'm going to write down 8 here. And here you need to pay attention, guys. The instructions say write the correct number 1 to 8 in boxes 1 to 6 on your answer sheet. So you must absolutely write down the number. If you write animals appear to lift our spirits, the answer is wrong because you don't do what you were asked to do. You didn't write down the Roman number, even if your answer is correct. So make sure you read the instructions carefully. We move on to section B. Let's have a look. What is section B talking about? Section B says Animal Assisted Therapy, AAT. So this is an abbreviation here. Mainly involves the use of animals to help people cope with the symptoms of an illness. Forming bonds with domesticated animals, most commonly dogs, but also cats, rabbits, birds, and so on, has been shown to relieve patients' boredom and distract them from pain. It increases motivation and positivity, encourages patients to be more physically active, and decreases loneliness. Then the section goes on saying that the strongest evidence in favor of AAT is for the treatment of depression and anxiety, but other conditions are also treated with this method. For example, dementia, autism, schizophrenia, and so on. Studies also show that those recovering from drug or alcohol addiction may benefit from AAT. So let's have a look at our headings. Which heading fits here? Again, we go through all the headings and check which heading fits best. Heading number 1, advanced use of support animals. This is not relevant for our section. Number 2, why some species cannot train for AAT. The section says nothing about why some species cannot train for AAT, so this is irrelevant. AAT is not a miracle solution. This doesn't appear in the section either. Benefits of using animals in therapy. This seems to fit, right? Section B talks about animal-assisted therapy, and it describes the benefits animals have on people who get this kind of therapy. They relieve patients' boredom, they distract them from pain, they encourage them to be more physically active and decrease loneliness. And they also help with the treatment of other conditions that are mentioned here. So obviously, this section talks about the benefits of using animals in therapy. Now, if you're unsure whether this heading is correct, have a look at the other headings to see whether you can rule them out. This will give you certainty if you are unsure whether this is the right heading. So let's quickly have a look at the remaining headings. Heading number 5, how AAT is used by psychologists. There is nothing about that in section B. Requirements for those involved in AAT, irrelevant. Examples of successful AAT schemes, this is also not mentioned in section B. And the last heading, we already used that one. So, heading number 4 is the correct heading. Benefits of using animals in therapy. Now we are really sure that this heading is correct. Let's write down 4 in box number 2. By the way, it's really useful to cross out the headings you've used before because this makes it easier to choose between the remaining headings as you go on. So let's cross out those here that we have already used. Now, let's have a look at section C. What is section C talking about? We will start reading from here. There are many different ways that therapy animals are put to use, but often the mere presence of a friendly pet is enough to improve well-being. One study carried out in a care home for the elderly revealed that 3 weekly 30-minute sessions with a dog and their handler not only boosted residents' moods, but also facilitated greater social interaction. So, what is the section talking about? The section says that there are many different ways that therapy animals can be used, but often the mere presence is sufficient to improve well-being. And then the section gives an example mentioning the study we were reading about. Let's move on. Another study indicated that reluctant child readers were happier to read aloud when dogs were brought into primary classrooms as listeners. So children enjoy reading more when dogs are present. Sometimes therapy animals play a more active role, as in a dog walking program here, designed to increase the amount of exercise taken by sedentary adults. And then the section says that participants said that they were motivated by feelings of responsibility towards the animals. Finally, the section mentions another program in which children with disabilities were able to ride and care for horses. And this increased their confidence, fitness, and coordination. So what is section C talking about? Section C is talking about different programs, right? Programs where animals are used to improve humans' well-being. And we have several of them here. The first one is using dogs in a care home for the elderly. I'm gonna use different colors here so you can see this better. The second one is about children which were happier to read aloud when dogs were present here in the classroom. Next, the next one is a dog walking program, and participants were more motivated because they had a feeling of responsibility towards the dogs. And finally, the section is talking about a program in which children with disabilities were able to ride and care for horses. So there are several programs mentioned in this section. Let's have a look at our list of headings. Which is the correct heading? Number 1, advanced use of support animals. This doesn't really fit. The section doesn't talk about advanced use of support animals. Next, why some species cannot train for AT. This also doesn't fit. Also, the next one is irrelevant. Let's move on. Heading number 7 seems interesting. Here, examples of successful AAT schemes. This is what the section is talking about, right? We just saw this. The section mentions several programs in which animals are used as therapy animals and describe their effect on humans, so how they improved people's well-being. And this is what this section is about, examples of successful AAT schemes. It gives several examples of such schemes. So we are going to write down 7 here. Let's check out section D. What is section D talking about? We will start reading here. One step above a therapy animal is a service animal. So now we are one step above a therapy animal. The section is talking about service animals, which must be trained to be active rather than passive. Service animals work with patients with long-term mental or physical health issues and are able to intervene in dangerous situations or episodes of problematic behavior. Okay. For example, psychiatric service dogs are taught how to wake someone from a nightmare. So this is an example. Calm someone having a panic attack and prompt someone to take their medication at the right time. These animals require certification to perform their duties, after which they must wear a special uniform and are allowed to accompany their owners anywhere in the public domain, unlike therapy animals, which are not. So service animals are allowed to accompany people in the public domain, while therapy animals are not allowed to do so. Let's check out our headings. Heading number 1 seems super interesting, right? It says advanced use of support animals. And that's what the section is talking about. The section says one step above a therapy animal is a service animal. So now this is an advanced use of support animals. And the section describes how these animals are used, what service animals have to do, their capabilities. They need to be active rather than passive. And then the section gives a few examples, like wake someone from a nightmare, calm someone having a panic attack, prompt people to take their medication at the right time, and so on. So heading number 1 seems to be the correct heading. But before we choose this heading, let's quickly have a look at the other answer choices to see whether this heading is actually correct. Number 2 says why some species cannot train for AAT. This is not relevant. AAT is not a miracle solution, also not relevant. And if you go on and have a look at the remaining headings, you can see that number 1 is the correct heading. So we are going to write down 1 on our answer sheet. Let's move on to section E. What does section E say? Section E says, not every animal is suitable for therapy or service. And then it goes on saying that, as a minimum, animals must pass a basic health check and be immunized against various diseases. And after this, they are selected on the basis of their natural temperament and their performance during obedience training. So obviously, this is about requirements an animal must comply with in order to be chosen as a therapy or service animal, right? All these points here are requirements. Let's go on. Even if they are good-natured, it is imperative they learn to follow a handler's instructions. And if they fail to do this, they are deemed unsuitable for therapeutic or service work. Handlers usually, but not always, a therapy animal's owner, also have to undergo rigorous training, even though they tend to work as volunteers. So this is about handlers who also have to undergo training. This training ensures they can keep their pets under control, but also that they are capable of building relationships with vulnerable people. Let's check out our headings. What do the headings say? I'm just realizing I forgot to cross out the headings we have already used. So let's quickly do this. Oops, this was the wrong color. Let's cross this out. We have already used those. So now it's easier because we only have to have a look at the remaining headings. Why some species cannot train for AAT. This is not in the section. AAT is not a miracle solution. This is also not relevant. How AAT is used by psychologists, there is nothing about psychologists in this section. The next heading seems correct, because here it says requirements for those involved in AAT, and this is what we just said, right? When reading section E, we realized that all these things that are mentioned here are requirements for an animal to be a therapy or service animal. Requirements for those involved in AAT. This is, of course, still about AAT because the section is talking about therapy or service. And as you can see, before that, the passage was talking about animal-assisted therapy, and that's what the passage is about. So, requirements for those involved in AAT. That's correct. And of course, Section E doesn't only talk about the animals who have to satisfy requirements to be involved in AAT, but also about the handlers here. They must undergo training as well. So the heading requirements for those involved in AAT, which means animals and handlers, is correct. We choose this one here, and I'm going to write down 6 in box number 5. Let's cross out this heading because we have used it, and let's have a look at the last section. What is section F about? We will start reading here. The extensive use of volunteers should make clear that AAT is a complementary treatment. So it says AAT is a complementary treatment and it cannot replace traditional physical therapy and psychotherapy, which are practiced by professionals. It is worth remembering too that there are potential downsides to AAT. Many people are nervous around animals, while others are allergic to their fur. Some patients become overly attached to the animals they bond with and struggle to cope with their leaving at the end of the session. And in very rare cases, therapy animals have spread disease among the humans they were supposed to help. But in spite of these drawbacks, since contact with animals has now been proven to positively impact both body and mind, AAT only looks set to grow in popularity. So let's have a look at our headings. Heading number 3 says AAT is not a miracle solution. This seems interesting because section F says it's a complementary treatment. This means it's an additional treatment, but it cannot replace traditional physical therapy and psychotherapy. That's what it says here. And there are also many drawbacks, so disadvantages to using this treatment, because some people are nervous around animals. This is what the section says here. Others are allergic to their fur or become overly attached to the animals, and then when they leave after the session, they are sad. Animals can spread disease. But the last sentence says that AAT seems to become more and more popular. So AAT is not a miracle solution fits, right? Because the section says we still need another kind of treatment, and there are also some drawbacks. So it's not a miracle solution, but it's part of a solution. The other headings don't fit. How AAT is used by psychologists. This is not about psychologists, and why some species cannot train for AAT. There is nothing in section F about why some species cannot train for AAT. So we pick heading number 3. We pick this one here. That's the correct heading. So I'm going to write down 3 here. And now 2 headings are left. And this is what the instructions say, right? There are 2 headings you don't need. So we have figured out the correct headings for all sections. Great job! By the way, if this video is helpful to you, hit the like button. Also, comment down below whether you want more IELTS reading practice tests. Write yes if you want more. If you want something else, tell me your video wish in the comments so I know what you would like to see on this channel. Now, let's continue solving this test. We will move on to questions 7 to 11. Let's first have a look at the instructions. Complete the note below. Okay, so this is about a note, and we can see this note here. Write 1 word from the passage for each answer. This is super important, guys. Here it says, write 1 word from the passage. If you write more than 1 word, the answer is wrong. So make sure you read the instructions carefully. Write your answers in boxes 7 to 11 on your answer sheet. These are note completion questions. I'm going to write this down. And they're called like that because you have to complete this note. Now, the first thing we are going to do now is we have a look at each question, so at each gap, and we check out the words around this gap, because this helps us find the information in the reading passage. We look for keywords, we look for paraphrasing, and once we have read the sentence around the gap, we have a look at the reading passage and scan the passage to find the relevant information. So we don't read the passage from top to bottom, because this takes way too much time. It's much faster figuring out the correct answer by scanning the passage and looking for words. Let's have a look at the first question. Question number 7. Here it says, advantages of AAT some people may experience. And now, a drop in something, pain perception and loneliness. So we are looking for pain perception and loneliness in the passage. And a drop. Now, it may be that these words are paraphrased. They do not necessarily have to appear exactly like that in the passage. So watch out for paraphrasing. We start scanning the passage from the very beginning. In section A, there is nothing about a drop in pain perception. This was simply an introduction telling us that the relationship between animals and humans can be beneficial, so that animals may have a calming effect on humans and so on. Section B was talking about animal-assisted therapy, AAT. I'm quickly erasing this so you can see this better. Now, animal-assisted therapy, AAT. Let's have a closer look at this section, because section B was talking about the effect of animals on humans in more detail. And if you have a quick look at this section, you can see that here it says, forming bonds with domesticated animals, most commonly dogs, but also cats, rabbits, and so on, has been shown to relieve patients' boredom and distract them from pain. Guys, in our note, it says a drop in pain perception and loneliness. Let's again have a look at our section, section B. A drop in pain perception. If forming bonds with domesticated animals distracts people from pain, this means that it leads to a drop in the perception of pain. So a drop in pain perception, right? It relieves patients' boredom, it increases motivation, positivity, encourages them to be more physically active, and decreases loneliness. These are the two things we can find in our note. Distract them from pain and decreases loneliness. This is what you can see here. A drop in pain perception, so distracts them from pain, and loneliness. And what's the third thing that is decreased where a drop is experienced? What's the third thing? The section says it relieves patients' boredom and distracts them from pain. We are not interested in an increase. We are interested in a decrease, in a drop. Here again, it's a decrease, but it talks about loneliness, and loneliness is already mentioned. So the only thing we can enter is boredom. If forming bonds with animals relieves patients' boredom, this means that there is a drop of boredom. So it decreases patients' boredom. So boredom is the correct word. So I'm going to enter boredom here. Next, let's go on with question number 8. A rise in something, positivity, and physical activity. We just read about that, right? So this should be easier. Positivity and physical activity. Here, the passage talks about being physically active and increases motivation and positivity. So in our note, positivity and physical activity are mentioned in our note. Positivity here and physical activity. And it says that people experience a rise. What's the third thing where a rise, so an increase, is experienced? Physical activity, positivity, and motivation. Here it says it increases motivation. I hope you can still read this. This is quite colorful here. So motivation. We're going to enter motivation. That's the word we're looking for. Let's move on with our note. Disadvantages of AAT. Some people may feel something when an animal is near them. Maybe you remember that we were reading about the disadvantages of AAT, right? Where did the passage talk about that? It was in the last section, section F, because this was the section where we said AAT is not a miracle solution. Maybe you remember that, because there are drawbacks. And drawbacks are disadvantages. And that's what the note is talking about. So let's have a closer look at this section. What may people feel? They feel something that is a drawback, a disadvantage to interacting with these animals. Here, the section says, it's worth remembering too that there are potential downsides to AAT. Many people are nervous around animals, others are allergic to their fur, and some patients may become overly attached to the animals. And another disadvantage is that therapy animals have spread disease among the humans they were supposed to help. So these are several drawbacks. The only drawback that makes sense in our note is nervous, right? Because our note says, feel something. The only logical word that we can enter is nervous. All other words don't fit here. They don't feel allergic to the fur. They are allergic to the fur. Maybe you could say they feel overly attached to the animals. However, you are only allowed to enter one word here, so this also doesn't fit. So we are going to write nervous. This is the word we have to enter. Next, question number 10. Suffer adverse reactions to animal something. So this is about adverse reactions. What are the disadvantages? Let's again have a look at this. Others are allergic to the fur, overly attached, spread disease. The only thing that fits here is fur, right? Because what is an adverse reaction? An allergy is an adverse reaction, right? So we need to enter fur here. Suffer adverse reactions to animal fur. Finally, let's check out question number 11. Become to something. Guys, this is about being overly attached to the animals, right? To be overly attached to something means to be too attached to something. Here you can see that the IELTS often uses paraphrasing to see whether you understand the passage correctly. So it doesn't say become overly attached because this would be too easy, but it says become too attached. So we are going to enter attached here. Awesome! We are done with our note completion questions. Great job! We will move on to questions 12 to 13. Let's have a look at the instructions. Complete the sentences below. Write one word. Again, this is super important. From the passage for each answer. Write your answer in boxes 12 to 13 on your answer sheet. These are sentence completion questions because here it says complete the sentences below. So you can see that there is a sentence here and you have to complete the sentence here. So I'm going to write sentence completion questions. Let's have a look at the first sentence. Research showed that some children were happy to read to dogs, though they had previously been something. So what we are going to do now is we have a look at the passage and we need to search the part in the passage that was talking about children who were happy to read to dogs. This was something in the middle here. I remember that. Here, this was in the section that was talking about the AAT schemes here. Section C. And if you have a look at this section, you can see this sentence here. Let's read the sentence again. Another study indicated that reluctant child readers were happier to read aloud when dogs were brought into primary classrooms as listeners. And then the passage goes on talking about the dog walking programs here. We are not interested in the dog walking programs. We are only interested in the child readers. So we don't need to read further. Let's again have a look at the question. Research showed that some children were happy to read to dogs, though they had previously been what? What had they been before the dogs came into the classroom and joined them, before they were allowed to read to dogs? Let's again have a look at this one sentence we just read. The key must be in the sentence. Another study indicated that reluctant child readers were happier to read aloud when dogs were brought. So They had been reluctant. This is the word that we need to enter. What does this word mean? It means that they didn't like to read aloud. They didn't want to do it. They were reluctant to do it. This is the word we need to enter. So I'm going to write down reluctant. Though they had previously been reluctant. We have completed the sentence. Awesome. Let's go on with the next one. Number 13. Research also showed that having to walk a dog encouraged people to move more. So obviously the word we need to enter refers to people, right? So we have to check what kind of people were encouraged to move more. And we can find the answer in the same section here, because this was about the dog walking programs here. They are mentioned here. So let's read the sentence more closely. Sometimes therapy animals play a more active role, as in a dog walking program designed to increase the amount of exercise taken by sedentary adults. So what kind of people is this about? The people they're talking about are adults. And what kind of adults? Sedentary adults. What does this mean? This is about adults who sit a lot, right? For example, because they're working a lot, they have to sit a lot on a desk. This is what sedentary means. It means sitting a lot. This is the word we need to enter. Sedentary. And here you can see, even if you have absolutely no idea what sedentary means, you know that this word must go into this gap, because you have only this one sentence talking about dog walking programs here. And there is only one word that describes the adults who participated in this study. And the kind of adults who participated and for whom the program was designed are sedentary adults. So even if you have no idea what sedentary means, you know that it must go into this gap. So here you can see that you don't always have to understand the meaning of the words. Now we're done with the sentence completion questions. Amazing, great job! I hope you liked this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you're notified when the next video comes out. Also, share this video with your friends so they can improve their IELTS reading score too. See you in the next video.